So in the previous video, we talked about how to begin to use Obsidian to guide you in your personalized learning system. In today's video, what we're going to go into is how to organize your notes to help you in your learning process. So there are three things that we'll be covering today. And the first one is about the use of folders in Obsidian. The second is the use of tags. And third, how to create an inbox to be able to process your learnings. So let's dive right in. The first is the use of folders. Now, many of us are familiar with the use of folders in our computers. It's a little thing that we create to hold in all our files, right? We could do the same in Obsidian. Now, if we don't use folders, most of our notes are basically just gathered into the vault of our Obsidian file. And when we start to use folders, we can be able to park them in certain demarcation of importance. Some folders that I use in my work are like therapy learnings folders, where I store all of my weekly reflections of learnings, be it things that went well or there were mistakes that I felt that I've made. They go into this little folder, and I number them and I also date them. So this is helpful because whenever I want to go into that and consolidate and synthesize my learnings, it's an easy way to do that. Another folder that's really useful to create, especially if you're adding attachments like JPEGs, images, or PDFs, is to create a folder called sources. You could name it whatever you want, attachments, whatever is relevant for the way you use it. In here, I call this sources. So that means that whenever I park in a little PDF attachment or an image, these all get stored in here. In fact, they get stored in here automatically. The way to do this is go to your settings. And when you're in your settings, you would see a section called Files and Links. And right at the bottom is this thing called Attachment Folder Path. All you have to do is name the place where you want your attachments to store. So whenever I drag an attachment into Obsidian, it automatically stores into this folder. Second, the use of tags. If folders were analogous to immediate family relationships, tags are like distant relatives. And this is useful. This is an analogy that I picked up from Nick Milo, which makes a lot of sense. And what this means is that a single note in Obsidian is able to have multiple tags, whereas you can't have one note existing in multiple folders. I mean, you can if you just copy and duplicate, but then it gets unwieldy. Whereas if you have one note, your one note can have multiple tags, multiple relationships. So let me give you an example. If I was to go into my vault and let's scroll through and see one that's relevant here. So yeah, let's say this book on the Mind Club that I've been reading, this has got a couple of tags, right? One on morality, another one on e-reading notes. So whenever I'm reading something on Kindle, for example, I'll call them e-reading notes, and sketch notes because I like some of the visuals that's been used. Usually the way I format my notes are two things that I put at the bottom. They are links. Links are what we call bidirectional links in Obsidian. If you remember from video 1, we talked about how to create a link from one note to another note. And that is using the square brackets and then finding the name of that note. Just to note, there are some keystrokes that don't get accepted as links if you title them in your notes. So it will prompt you, for example, like colons are not you can't use colons in your name, so you can't create bidirectional links that way. And then tags, as this is part of the topic. I have morality, e-reading notes, and sketch notes. So these are usually at the bottom. This is useful when you pull up your graph view, go to open local graph, and you would see the relationships of the different nodes. And more on this in our future videos when we talk about how to use graphs to extend your thinking and connections and learning, right? So you could see that each node would have multiple links or multiple tags that you can create from there. So let's take a look at another note that I had recently. It was ADHD and the return of the hunter. So this is where I was reading something about a metaphor that's used about people with ADHD, the hunter versus the farmer. And I really like this metaphor that's employed. And in my note here, you could see there are many other journal articles that I've seen talking about the flip sides of people with ADHD, that they are more likely to be creative, innovators, and more likely to be entrepreneurs. So these are links to the different articles that I've seen. And then tags. So there's a tag for ADHD, there's a tag for important, and this is important to me, so I've denoted that with the acronym IMPT. Flip sides, because this tells the story beyond the pathology or clinical diagnosis of ADHD. E-reading notes, creativity, innovation, and evolution. So there you have it. So some useful tags to consider, especially if you're a mental health professional and you're using Obsidian to help you in your learnings and discoveries, I would suggest a couple. One tag that I use called forget and relearn. So forget and relearn basically means that if there's some things I come across that I want to revisit, I want to test my retrieval skills to be able to learn deeper on that, I would usually tag them with the note forget and relearn. So if I was to look at my Obsidian and I go search, all you have to do is type tag, colon, and then hashtag forget and relearn, and these are my notes. Now, there's probably way too many things to forget and relearn. I probably would need to prune these forget and relearn and remove the tags from some notes of these things, but you get the point. This helps you to revisit some key notes. And of course, if you're using Obsidian as a to-do list, you could use tags as to-do lists. And also I write for the Frontiers of Psychotherapist Development blog. So when I write, I name them in 3 levels. One, I call them seedling. So if there's some new ideas that I have not expanded, I call them FTP/seedling. So this creates a nesting of the tags below just FPD/seedling. FPD/budding. Budding means things have expanded a little bit but not yet completed. And then FPD/grown is for things that I've completed. Another useful tags, this auto doubles up a little bit with the folder. I also have a tag called therapy learnings. This was when back in the days when I was using Simple Note, I would use this. But of course, this doubles up in the folder, and that's still fine because you can have them in the folders and you can also have them as tags. Finally, the last one is use an inbox. So we all know about the email inbox of incoming emails from people. The inbox in Obsidian is more of stuff that I've captured over the past 1 week that have not been metabolized. So if you look at my inbox here right now, if I open this up, there are stuff that needs to be published, writing to expand. I usually keep them in my inbox so that I know immediately these are things that I need to pay attention to. Here, you would see other stuff that have not been metabolized, things that I'm still working on. And what I usually do is I go through them and I will tidy up. I may add some tags, I may change some of the things, I may add more information, be it stuff that I'm consuming from podcasts, e-readings, books that I'm reading from paperbacks, and all the other stuff online too. I'm trying to do what I can to capture almost everything. So for more about this form of discipline, this form of system, we talk about this in our online course called Deep Learner. For more information, go to darrellchild.com/courses, and you can have a preview about what it means to create, capture, retrieve, and synthesize our notes in this way. Part of this is using this inbox principle to be able to not just gather and not have these things processed, whereas the inbox helps me on every Monday when I look through this. I would go through them, and in fact I even put them into a little thing called weekly synthesis. So in weekly synth, you could see that different dates I'm metabolizing different things. So I've yet to do it for this week. There's stuff that I'm going through, and these things will be moved in from my inbox, and I'll put a bi-directional link in here. So previously other weeks of stuff that I've gone through. I was really looking a lot on the topic of ADHD for adults because I have clients I'm working with and I'm trying to do a just-in-time refresher learning of stuff that may be helpful to them. Of course, the topic on COVID is on my mind, decision-making, interesting asides that I've seen. So interesting asides are stuff that are maybe not relevant to other things, but I will still keep them, like the one on Brian Eno talking about non-fungible tokens, NFTs, goals, morality, and reading a lot about Rabbi Sachs, Jonathan Sachs, talk about morality in his last book before he passed away. Even movies that I've watched, I'm trying to capture. Don't Look Up really stood out to me, and I put down some notes on that, and so on. So there you have it. We've talked about how to organize your notes, and the 3 key things here are the use of folders, use of tags. One note can have multiple tags, and the use of an inbox to process existing notes before moving them to your vault or to other folders and adding tags, more tags if you need to, for each of those notes. In the future videos, we're going to talk about top plugins based on core plugins or even community plugins that are created by people that you can augment your existing Obsidian application. And we are also going to talk about the use of graphs to extend your connections and to look at unusual links that you might have with your previous notes as your garden of learning in your personalized learning system grows. So stay tuned for future videos, and again, as with most usual spiel about YouTube, if this is something you want to stay tuned on, subscribe to our channel, tell us if you like or dislike the video. Even if you dislike it, I find it important to learn from your experience so that we can make things more helpful for you.